Oh, hello, everybody. Just welcoming you to a very special live tonight. My name is Aurelia Davis, the educator's educator, and at the same time, we're introducing the Teacher Society, which will be very interesting because we do have a guest. We do have a guest tonight. If you do not know about me, my name is Aurelia Davis, and just a little bit of background. I'm a veteran teacher from Chicago Public Schools. I've been retired since 2012. And after retirement, I just could not let it go. So I continue to just reach out and work with organizations that are very interested and passionate about the children that we serve, the children that we teach. And just with my own experience, I'm just finding that there are other situations out there. There's other avenues of education that are out there. And for the next couple of days, the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be introducing some very interesting individuals that are taking education to the next level, taking education to the next level. So that's enough about me. I'm going to read your bio. Tonight we have Kristen Himm. Kristen Himm is a former public school teacher turned unschool mom and advocate. She currently unschools her two children, ages 11 and 7, while also running an unschool inspired space where they offer clubs, programs, events, support, and community for local homeschool families. Kristen also provides unschool coaching and supports to families, to parents everywhere. Kristen, welcome to this interesting live. Just so glad to have you. And I just have a few questions, but in the meantime, I just want you to just basically just get into what you do and how you do it and give it to us. Okay.
Hello. Yeah, hi. It's really great to be here. Thank you so much for inviting
Mhm.
me.
Yes.
Um, yeah, so let me say a little about what I do. I taught in public school for about 20 years,
Okay.
and I had a really I had a calling when I was like 14 that I was going to be a teacher, right? And so I kind of knew it for a long time. There was a period of time in my teens when I thought maybe I'll open my own school, because even at that age, I knew that there were lots of issues with our public school system.
Mhm.
So I thought about that. And in the end, I decided that I didn't want to do that. I decided I wanted to be a teacher that was there for all children, not just
Mhm.
children whose parents could afford public school. Private school. So, so I pursued the teaching degree and got into teaching, and I really thought I would be there forever. I thought I would teach for 30 or 40 years,
Mhm.
not just 20. And then shortly after my oldest child started school, I really started to examine what how school was impacting her.
Mhm.
And and then, COVID happened, and like for so many people, it provided a lot of time to reflect and sort of think about where I was in my life, and what I wanted to do next. And I realized that I didn't want to keep teaching in a public setting, and I didn't want to keep sending my children to that setting anymore, because I didn't think it was a healthy space for them.
Nice.
Yeah. So then I also had to do something with my time and find some income to replace my teacher income. And so if I was going to homeschool, I figured I would work with homeschoolers,
Mhm.
and that's what I've been doing for about 3 years now. And within that, I also decided on a very specific type of homeschooling, which is called unschooling. And unschooling is really about allowing children to follow their interests and passions. We don't we don't try to fit our kids into any kind of box. We don't necessarily believe that we need to teach the four core subjects.
Mhm.
And yeah, so it's very different than what most people are used to, but it feels
Okay.
very natural and normal for us and for most homeschool families that do it.
Okay, very good. What initially drew you to the concept of homeschooling, and what was some of the pivotal moments that solidified your decision to become an unschooling mom? So
Yeah.
what drove you to that particular platform?
So I have somebody very close to me who was already homeschooling and unschooling their children,
Mm.
and that was my sister. She decided on homeschooling and unschooling when her kids were still very young, like toddler age. She had had a really bad experience in school for herself and really didn't want to expose her children to that. I didn't. I loved school when I was a child. I excelled at school and did very well at it. And she had a very different experience. So for her, it was like, I don't want to expose my kids to what happened to me. That was her thought process. For me, it took all the way until I saw for my own child that, and what I would say, what I saw with my own child was that her spirit was being extinguished. She wasn't able to be her bright, peppy self at school.
So the concept unschooling, how long have it been, how long have it existed? And at the same time, would you say that there are other groups, or specifically where you live, that they're set up like a network for this particular group of schooling?
That's a good question. So the history of unschooling is it dates back to the 1970s. I mean, in reality, unschooling as a practice has been happening for centuries. It's how people learned before there was formal schooling. Through apprenticeships, through just living life with their families. Before people went to school, they still learned things. They just learned them not in school. But the term unschooling was coined in the 1970s by a man named John Holt, and he has some books out. He actually didn't use the word unschooling in any of the books he wrote, but he did use it in an interview about his books at one point in time. So that's kind of what people grabbed onto. So that concept has been around for quite a number of years now. As far as networks where I live, and I'm in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and are there networks of unschoolers specifically? We have a private school about an hour from here in Santa Fe that I think follows a similar philosophy. And there are also lots of different homeschool groups that may lean unschooly, but don't necessarily like that word. A lot of people don't necessarily like the word unschooling for a variety of reasons, but let me think. Some people like the term self-directed education. Some people like meaningful learning or interest-based learning or student-led learning. So some people use different terms to describe it.
To describe it, how would you say that is this much different than the Montessori method, or is it sort of close?
Yes. Yeah. Somebody was showing me sort of a continuum recently that
Mhm.
involved like sort of Montessori and then Waldorf, if you're familiar with Waldorf, and then sort of unschooling after that. So Montessori's great in its own right. It has it's very much about children doing pacing at in their own way. So that is like a step in the right direction, is what I would call it. But it's still not unschooling because their students are still expected and potentially required to learn specific things in a certain order.
Okay. Okay.
Mhm.
So you were saying that would you say, so does unschooling have like a prescribed curriculum, or do you basically set up your own curriculum according to the children that you're working with and according to the students?
Right. So not a curriculum. I believe one or two people have tried to write or have written sort of an unschooly curriculum, but no. So when it comes to what children learn, it is really, really up to the child. And it also has a lot to do with what's important to the family. So I like to say there are as many ways to unschool as there are families doing it, because that's true. Families unschool in the way that makes the most sense to them. So some families are unschooling and they are very tech-based. Perhaps the parents are coders or work online a lot. So those kids might be more into tech type things like video games or coding or that type of thing. Whereas other families might be like homesteaders. They might be the type of people that farm and have animals. And so they spend a lot of time outside and taking care of their land and their animals. And still other families might like to camp a lot or hike a lot or craft a lot. It really depends on the family. And then, of course, whatever the family's doing, it's also common sometimes for kids to sort of break off onto their own interests. So unschoolers study whatever interests them. And that means that they learn to read in different ways. I know kids that have kind of taught themselves to read by reading lyrics while they listen to their favorite songs, or having subtitles on, or they just kind of pick it up from being read to. And some kids still need some direct instruction, but a lot of unschooled kids pretty much teach themselves to read in whatever way makes the most sense for them.
I see. As far as ages are concerned, homeschooling, I know, have gone homeschooling. Traditional homeschoolers are usually parents that will teach their children from like preschool or kindergarten all the way to 8th grade. And then sometimes they go beyond 8th grade and go into high school. So with unschooling, how does that age group look as far as taking it to what level and what, when does it end?
It never ends.
No, it never ends. That's a good thing.
In fact, some people will talk, and if we're using the word self-directed instead, which is, again, sort of, some people think they're different. I use the two terms interchangeably, self-directed learning and unschooling. But if you think about it, adults are pretty much self-directed, right? Adults do what they want and they follow their interests. And they, I've learned lots of things since I left school because I wanted to, because it was something that I was curious about. So in that regard, unschooling never ends. Some people start really young, like my sister started with her kids when they were toddlers. Some people try school. They think it's the path they're going to do, like I did, and they start sending kids to school and then realize it's not a good fit and pull them out. A lot of people do feel like unschooling is sort of a better fit for younger children, because there's also a lot of talk in the unschool community about the importance of play and how it's really important for kids to be able to play. And that's one of the things that school sort of takes away from children, right? Is that they're not able to play as much as they would if they were at home or in a play-based space. So a lot of people think, yeah, unschooling is great for little kids because they can play and they can learn through their play, but eventually they need to go to school. And maybe that's true. But there are plenty of people who have unschooled into high school and through high school. I know there are plenty of unschoolers who unschool all the way through through high school, but then go to college. They decide they want to go to college and they get into college and get a college education as well. And then there's others who don't, maybe they go to trade school, maybe they find a job that they like that doesn't require a degree, or maybe they become entrepreneurs and start their own businesses.
Fantastic. Sounds good. Okay. What does a typical unschool day look like? What time do you get started? So on and so forth throughout the day. What happens?
Yeah. So again, that's really going to depend on the family. For my particular family, I can say that I'm the first one up. My kids get to stay up late and they get to sleep as late as they want. Some days we have commitments that we have to get out of the house for. So, but typically I get up and I take care of some of my own personal work tasks in the morning while my kids are still sleeping, which is really lovely. On days that we have to go somewhere, then I wake them up and, we get ready and go off, like you mentioned it in my bio, we run an unschool space. So we do spend a few days a week there. And while that space opens at 9 a.m., my children and I don't arrive until 10 because that's better for us. And we have other people there that are early morning people. So those people go early and get the place started. And then we come a little later and we stay later in the day. Other people who work there leave earlier in the afternoon because that's what works for them. And then people really explore what they want. At our space, we have different activities that we offer our kids. So we actually are just coming off of a 2-week break and we're starting our summer session next week. But we'll have trips to the park. We'll have field trips to lots of different places, farms and history museums and art spaces and stuff like that. We have a drama group that's going to meet in the afternoons. So those kids study drama and how to be an actor and how to, develop characters and stuff like that. On Thursday mornings, we're running a pen pal club. So all of our kids will get pen pals in other states, and we'll either write letters or draw pictures or whatever makes sense for where they are in their development. And on Thursday afternoons, we're running an entrepreneurs group. So we're helping kids with starting their own businesses when they're kids.
Wow. Oh, great. Great. That sounds good. That sounds very, very good. Yeah, you're saying, so basically, from what I'm hearing, that you don't necessarily do everything in your home. You do take your children outside of your home and go to a space that has been designated for unschool. And within that particular space, there are other individuals that are doing basically the same thing and teaching the same, or teaching also, correct?
Yes and no. So not everyone who comes to our space actually calls themselves unschoolers. Some of our families that come do practice some sort of curriculum or feel it's important to stay on track with some of what public school kids are doing. And that's fine. We welcome everybody. But unschooling outside of the home, absolutely. Yes. Lots of unschoolers, like I said before, if they're homesteaders or something like that, they still might spend a lot of time at home, but it is very common for unschoolers to seek community and learning experiences outside their home. They do it in a way that makes sense for their family. So sometimes that means visiting museums or other spaces. For a lot of families, especially as kids get older, they'll seek out classes or groups that feed into their kids' interests. So like I have my niece, is one of her big interests is cosplay. So she's a very talented cosplayer. She makes herself into whole other people or characters. And yeah. And so, I think it was last summer, the summer before, but she found a class for stage makeup. So she took a class on how to do stage makeup. So that feeds into her interest, right? So stuff like that. I know kids who, are interested in art, so their parents find them art classes, or who are interested in music and their parents find them music classes, stuff like that.
Okay. With the word STEM coming up across, science, technology, engineering, and math, would you find that some of the activities and the projects that your children are working on could easily go into STEM, and you can easily attach them to those activities?
Yeah, for sure. For the kids who want it, right? So there are some kids who are very interested in those kinds of things. I know kids that are interested in coding, like I mentioned earlier. So that's definitely STEM. I know kids who are interested in stop motion video, or making videos of their own and learning how to edit those videos and do different sound over it and that kind of thing. So yes, kids are free to. And the other interesting thing is that technology is a tool that's here and isn't likely going anywhere, right? And it's just developing and changing and progressing. And so allowing kids to engage with technology in any way that makes sense to them, they're going to learn how to navigate through technology and use it for whatever purposes they want to use it for.
I see. Very good.
Yeah.
So what kind of you've been unschooling for how long now? How many
3 years?
3 years.
3 years.
Okay. Okay. Have you found that some resources and materials out there, for the typical school or whatever, is available to you, and that basically you can use, or do you sort of create a lot of things yourself as far as your materials and resources?
So in my state, every state has different homeschooling laws and different homeschooling resources. And again, unschooling is just a type of homeschooling. So in my state, our state provides pretty much zero support or help around homeschooling. So we cannot go to our district and ask. We can ask, but there is no requirement that they provide us with curriculum or learning materials. then, and also we don't receive any kind of money to put towards any kind of learning resources for our students or for our children. So those kinds of things aren't available in that way. But my city is, I think my city has a lot of resources for homeschoolers that people have just gone ahead and done. It's not provided by the city, it's not provided by the government, but there are lots of organizations that have created resources, classes, groups, co-ops, those kinds of things for homeschoolers. So I know there's one resource in our city called like the Education Resource Center, and they have curriculum that parents can look at, sometimes check out, and that kind of thing. But we personally don't use anything that would look like a traditional curriculum with my children. Not at this time, anyway. They sometimes see like a workbook at the store and go, oh, I want this so I can practice my math. And so I'll give it to them, and they might do some pages in it here and there, but they don't generally stick to it. And they certainly aren't required by me to do those things.
I see. So your daughters are your children are two different ages. Do you find that a lot of the things that you're working with them on are basically together, or do you have a tendency of working with your oldest child differently and, giving her, feeding resources into her differently than the younger child?
Very differently, yes. So I'm sure before you retired, differentiation was still a huge word in school, right? Like we needed to figure out where our kids were and what they needed and what they were interested in, and try to provide that as best we can. And that is definitely how unschooling works. Each child is different and unique, and we provide what they need when they need it. So my oldest, for about 1.5 years, was very into swimming. She was on a swim team for a while. She lost interest in that recently and decided to leave. But that was one thing that we did for her that was really important to her. We recently found a wonderful space here in our town that offers a bunch of different creative arts classes for kids, and for actually older kids. And they actually offer them for free, which is amazing. So she recently took a mural arts class there. She's very interested in taking a sewing class. We haven't found one that matches our schedule yet, but we're hoping they'll offer one soon that works for us. And they also do, at that space, they do screen printing. They do a couple of different music type classes. They teach kids DJing, lots of different things. Yeah.
That sounds good. So, as far as you mentioned your niece, how old is your niece that was unschooled?
So she just turned 17.
Oh, okay. So, with other children, and as far as and I have found this to be very true. At one time they were talking about homeschooling and how children were not allowed to get out and just socialize, but that's going to happen. That's going to happen. So do you find that you basically have a tendency of setting up play dates for your daughters and for your children, as far as, throughout the week and everything, so that they can, do socialize within the area of the age that they are, that's what I'm saying.
Yes. So socialization is such a great topic. It's one that we homeschoolers laugh about, to be quite frank, because people say, well, you're homeschooling, how will your children be socialized? But how often do teachers at public school tell kids they're not here to socialize? Stop talking, do your work. You're not here to socialize. You can talk for 20 minutes at lunch or 10 minutes at recess, but you aren't socializing in this classroom, right? So we kind of joke about that. So, I mentioned that we run a space. So our kids get lots of social interaction at our unschool space that we run. But socializing goes so much more beyond that. And another issue that I'll say that I try not to slam schools. I respect all of the teachers that are doing all of the amazing work that they're doing in schools. I also think it's very important to point out some of the inadequacies of schools. And those inadequacies are the reasons that we unschool. They're the reasons that other families homeschool or choose other educational options for their kids, because there are so many things that just aren't working well in the school system. In terms of socialization, one of the issues that I have with school, aside from teachers telling kids not to talk, is that children are grouped by age, right? So they're all put together by age. And that is not the healthiest way for children to grow up. I don't only hang out with people my age. I don't only interact with people my age. I interact with people of all ages. And it's really important for people to interact with people who are not the same age as them. Granted, children will build the closest relationships that they have, the closest friendships that they have with kids who are close in age to them. That's perfectly normal and typical. But it's also really important. So in our space, we have this wide range of kids from like 4 to 15, and they interact together. And we have, I mean, my 11-year-old has friends that are older than her, younger than her. Same with my 7-year-old. They have friends that are just different ages, and they interact beautifully together. So, and then one other thing I would say about socialization is it's not just about friends, right? But when we take our kids out with us into the world, when we go to the grocery store, or we go out to eat, or we go to the library, our kids are talking to the people that are taking care of us. They talk to the librarian. They order their own food when we eat out. They do their own transactions when they want to buy something at the store. They go up to the, cashier and bring their items and give them their money and have a conversation with them while they're being checked out.
Okay, that sounds good. Okay, great, great. Now, I know I was looking at your website, and I know that you're doing some coaching and some different things and whatever. Tell me how that is going, and how many, who's reaching out to you? Who do you find that they're reaching out to you? The question is, do you find that more people are reaching out now after the pandemic than before? So how is that going as far as your coaching and that type of thing?
Sure. So, I only started after the pandemic, so I can't say if there's more people now than there were. My one-on-one coaching, I honestly don't get a ton of clients for my one-on-one. I love working with families. What I see most when people do reach out about that type of coaching is a lot of times they are trying to make the switch from public schooling or from what we call school at home. There's a school at home model of homeschooling where they kind of use curriculum and try to model what's happening at school, but doing it at home. So we find families that are trying to move, like I said, from one to the other. A lot of times one parent is more on board than the other parent. And so it's helpful for them to get somebody like me to talk to the parent who's more hesitant and help them realize what the benefits are to this type of schooling or education. But where we do get a lot of response is in our support group. So we provide a couple of group support options where we have some in-person meetings and some online meetings, and we've had quite a response to that. And I think not only is it more affordable, actually our support groups are free. So not only is it more accessible to people financially, but I think people actually really like the group aspect of it. One thing that a lot of homeschoolers and unschoolers say that they're looking for is community. And so when they can find a group of parents who are all on a similar path to them and can talk about their struggles and their resources and their wins and, a lot of different things, that's, I think, what people are seeking. And our support groups have been incredibly successful. And we've been running those for about 1.5 years, and we have them twice a month.
How about how many people are attending the support groups at this time?
So there's no commitment. So it really changes. Sometimes we have like 4 people and sometimes we have like 12. I don't know that we've had much more than 12 at any given meeting, but we do have around 30 people on that list. Wow. So
that's great.
Yeah.
Great. That's great. You know what? And what I was thinking, and when you was talking about unschooling and everything, I do know of a couple of groups or a couple of homeschooling parents that were doing so well with their children that they looked up and they had some more children from the neighbors and whatever. So is that happening to your particular program at this time?
Oh yeah, it is. It happens. I would say that I get calls around once a week from somebody who says, I'm ready to pull my kids out of school. What do I do? Sometimes they don't even know, sometimes people don't even know how to start homeschooling, what is required by them, where to find resources, that kind of thing. So I get calls all the time, people saying, I want to homeschool my child. Please tell me what I need to do. And we also get people, I mean, we've been adding people to our program a lot, especially the last few weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow. Mm-hmm. So it's not the type of thing where someone may want to bring their child into the particular program into your unschooling environment, but you're basically training those individuals on how to be homeschoolers themselves, as far as unschool, teachers themselves. In other words, you're not building necessarily a school within your house beyond your daughters or beyond your children. Has that ever happened?
No, it's both. I mean, because we have our space, and our space isn't in our house. We actually have a
Oh, okay.
commercial
That's
space.
right.
It's actually, our space is a little bigger than our house. So, yeah, so we have a space where people come and we have a drop-off program that's a full day, 9 to 3, 3 days a week.
Okay.
And that's our unschool inspired space where kids come and they are literally not required to do any specific schoolwork. They come and they play and they interact. We offer activities. We say, hey, I'm going to do this science project over here. Do you want to come do it? Some kids will come over and be like, hey, that's cool. I want to do that too. Other kids, no, thanks. I'm playing this game with my friend. Some other kids will take what we're doing and turn it into a completely different activity. You know how kids are amazing at doing that type of thing. So, yeah, we do a lot of different things. And yes, we do have people joining us. We have almost 200 people on our mailing list for our unschool space.
Wow. Okay, can you share some personal anecdotes or success stories about your children's experience with unschooling?
Yeah, so I guess I'll start with my oldest. She, like I said, she went to school and she actually did public school from pre-K through the end of third grade. And third grade was our pandemic year. That was the year our state did virtual school for like a full year from 2020 into 2021. So, and that was third grade for her. So she was virtual the whole time, but she was still doing school. And as I mentioned, I just really felt that her spirit was kind of getting crushed. And so since pulling her out of school and embarking on this journey, I just believe she has come back into herself. She really is starting to know who she is and be solid and confident in who she is. And to me, that's more important than any kind of grade or, anything else. So, and she learned to read when she was in school because she had to. I personally think that school pushes reading far too early. And I think that's why a lot of kids struggle with it. There are kids who are ready to read when they're 5 and 6, but there are a lot of kids who aren't ready until they're 7 or 8 or 9 or even 10. And if they're left alone about it and they're not pressured into it, they will become readers. They will become awesome readers.
Right.
So she learned to read when she was young. I do think she was pushed to do it too early. I look back at myself making her do her reading homework and all the tears that we shared over it and the struggles. So she can read. She doesn't always love to read, but she does occasionally pick up a book just because she wants to. So that's really great. And she's learning lots of different things. She spent a lot of time figuring out relationships and her friendships. And I think she's finally figured, not that anybody's ever completely figured out how to be in relationships with other people. We're always working on it. But I think she's gotten a lot better at it in the last year or two. And so then my little one is like a different story because she's never been in a school setting. So she didn't have that forced learning happen to her because I made this decision when she was 4. And up until then, she had not been to school. We're very blessed to have grandparents here that helped a lot take care of my kids when they were super young. And my husband and I were working full time. And so both of my kids got to spend, babyhood up until 4 with their grandma a lot. And that was such a blessing and so amazing. So my 7-year-old doesn't fully read, but it's been so fun to watch her go through her own process. She asks about, she'll say, I want to learn to read, and we'll do some lessons together, or we'll get on like a reading app that makes it fun, like gamifies it kind of. And she's done a lot of that. And she went through a phase where she just loved to make cards for everybody. So she doesn't write a ton, but she knows how to write many words. She knows how to write to and from. She knows how to write mom and dad and her name and her sister's name. She knows how to write happy birthday because she wanted to be able to write that. She knows how to write a couple of her best friends' names. And she's just learning more words that way all the time. So that's so much fun to see her on her own little journey with it, and to see the progress that is nothing like the progress that an assessment measures, like a reading assessment. Mm-hmm. But it's very clear to me, who is very, I know her better than probably most people. And I can see all of the progress that she's made. And I know she's going to be a flourishing reader as soon as she's ready. And then likewise with math, and I only talk about reading and math because there's some of the things that people ask about, like, what about reading? What about math? People won't learn them if they're not directly taught. But with math, it's really interesting too, because sometimes she says, give me math problems. And I will just verbally tell her, add 4 + 3 or 2 + 9 or whatever, and she'll do them. But she also, and I think I pick up on these things, maybe because I'm a teacher, maybe because sometimes we feel like we need to prove that what we're doing is working. But, if we sit down to play Uno is a game that we love in our house. And so we'll say, okay, we're going to play 3 rounds of Uno. And so we'll play a round of Uno, and then she'll say, okay, we've played 1 and now we have 2 more. It's like, okay, she understands math, right? She knows how this works. So, just little conversations like that. And money, I give my kids allowance, and they're allowed to use it how they want. And so that works too. She'll have her allowance from 1 week and then tell me, oh, well, I'm going to get this much more tomorrow on allowance day. So then I'll have this much total. And then she'll even bring up the things she wants to buy and say, well, I think I still need a few dollars before I can buy that. So, she's using math in the most natural and normal ways that we all do all the time without having to have it drilled into her.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And what's going on is that a lot of school systems are going back to teaching the child, each individual child, instead of doing the group method. And they found out that was not going to work during the pandemic, because they took so many things under, just assumptions as to every child had a laptop, every child had the internet. And what they're finding is that a lot of children have not necessarily come back to the classroom because of the struggles that they may have had, or not necessarily struggles, but how they were able to do some enrichment at home, with those individual parents. And sometimes we're looking at a lot of blended parents, a lot of blended families that basically tapped into these young people and just started giving them that one-on-one. And my thing is this: if it's working, keep doing it. If it's working, keep doing it. This has been fantastic. I have a few more questions. It says, how do you ensure that your children are meeting educational milestones? But I think you talked about that basically at this particular point in time, you're not necessarily don't have a measuring stick against what they're doing. Is that correct?
It is. So, and that is a question that gets asked. How do we make sure they're learning what they're supposed to be learning? So my question back is, who decides what they're supposed to be learning, right? So we have grade level standards, which I'm sure you remember from your teaching days, right? Everybody has grade level standards. Every state has them. But I don't necessarily believe that they're developmentally appropriate or that they are necessary. If you remember the show, Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader? Right?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So, all these adults couldn't answer these questions that they supposedly learned in school, right? A lot of what we are taught in schools ends up being what we call as adults trivia. It's trivial. It's not as important if it's not what you're
going to be using.
Yeah. So I also will often say there is no such thing as ahead or behind. Everybody is exactly where they need to be. Mm-hmm. So my kids need to read, but they're going to read because reading is a tool that everyone uses in this society, right?
Yes.
Reading is just there. So same with math. People are going to learn how to do the math because it's a tool that they need to get by in society. And if they can't do it themselves, I don't know. When I was in high school, our teachers said, you're not going to carry around a calculator in your pocket every day, so you better learn how to do this. And we all carry around calculators in our pockets all day now. So, you know, now some states do require that kids learn certain things, and some states do check in on their homeschoolers to see if they're meeting state standards and grade level standards. I'm fortunate to live in a state that does not. They don't test us. They don't do portfolios. And I am so connected to my kids that I know that they are making amazing progress and learning wonderful things, and that whatever they need to learn, they will. There's kids who have learned all of high school math in a matter of weeks because they were ready to do it and they needed to do it to get into a program they wanted to do. So they buckled down and they did it. And I believe that if my children ever need to learn anything beyond algebra, then they will. And I'll support them in them. I'll help them find whatever program they need, or a tutor, or whatever they need to learn what they need to learn. And yeah.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. In the state of Illinois, we're basically still hooked on Common Core. And I can basically truly say from the time that I was teaching, it changed so much because every new generation of children know something different. And you and I talked about when we talked about our interview, when you're looking at babies sitting in carts rolling, in the grocery stores, and they have technology in their hands and they know how to take those little fingers and point to what they need to point to, then things are basically taking place, so that's basically, so the measuring stick is not needed. I guess what I would be interested in is that when they are, for those that are going to apply to college, what would they basically be asked to do? Just take basically the college exams, entrance exams and things like that. What does that look like?
So that really depends on the college and what the college requires. So my kids are young, so we're not looking at colleges just yet. Okay. But for other families that I have spoken to, if a family, sometimes you can find it on their website, but sometimes it's a little trickier for homeschoolers or unschoolers. And so if you contact their admissions office and say, I need an alternative path to admissions, so something different than high school transcripts, they can usually give an alternative path. And sometimes it often means taking placement tests or providing a transcript. So at least in my state, I think in many other states, the homeschool parent creates the transcript of what their children learn. Mm-hmm. And unschool parents, it's so fun because I've heard some unschool families talk about it, but the unschool parent and their teen will create the transcript together, and they will get very creative with it, right? They'll put down credit for video editing and credit for art and credit for, and they'll give PE credit because they took a ninja class or, different stuff like that. So they create the transcripts and the diploma. Of course, colleges can decide if they want to take them or not, or accept them or not. But again, a lot of times it comes down to creating a portfolio and taking some placement tests. But I know a kiddo who's 13 years old and has already finished his first semester of community college with straight A's, by the way. And he aced the entrance exam. So,
That's fantastic. That's great. Yeah, I know. And so your particular program, these programs are growing. They are growing. And to have that support or those resources like your particular website and, you as an advocate, it's very helpful because we don't know exactly what the future is going to look like. But I think through the pandemic threw a lot of people off, to the point where they say, maybe I would be better if I keep my child at home and teach them at home, So this is so interesting. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Let me see if there's anything else I would like to know. And then you can just sort of let me know if there's anything that, oh, okay, we were talking about transitioning. Do you find that some parents that have the transitioning from a public school, I think you talked about it a little bit, transitioning from a public school or regular school into homeschooling or unschooling, is it easier for parents, or do you feel they need some kind of training in place first before they do it? Also, is it something that they need to do? I would say, like when they're on a heavy frustration level, I'm ready to take them out. You know how that goes sometimes. Or either is it good for them to basically just start that new year, starting in like whenever school starts, instead of taking them out in the middle of the year. So, does your program or does your group help them transition, and give them ask the necessary questions as to what it will entail and what it includes so that they'll be ready for
Yes.
everything?
Yes. So I will say that for parents and families that have kids in school and they're pulling them out of school, the transition is almost always harder on the parent than the child.
Mhm.
Children are natural unschoolers. I mean, one of the basis of unschooling is that every human is born hardwired to learn, right? We come into the world ready to learn things. And that doesn't go away unless it's stamped out of us. So first of all, I would never advise a parent to wait. If they're ready, then pull their kids out. They don't need to wait until next year. They don't need to ride out the semester or the month or even the week. Like, go get your kid at lunch if you're ready to, and pull them out of school. If you're done, just be done. Don't keep going just to like close it out. But parents do often need a lot. And so what we call this is deschooling. So we call it deschooling, and deschooling sometimes gets a couple different definitions. So in one regard, people talk about deschooling as sort of this period of time where they'll say we're going to deschool for a month or a few months after we pull our kids out of school. And what they mean is they're not going to do much. They're just going to kind of pretend it's summer break and let kids hang out and do what they want. And that's great. I highly recommend people do that, because it really, especially some kids really need to heal from some trauma that happens at school. Some kids deal with bullying. Some kids deal with, lots of different things when they're coming out of school. So having some time that's just low demand and let's just kind of chill out and do what feels good to us for a while is really, really important. But when I talk about deschooling, I talk about something that's much deeper and much longer, and usually has more to do with the adults than the children. And that is when we really dig into a lot of the beliefs and things that we hold that are conditioned into us from our own schooling experiences, and learning how to let go of them. So it's really questioning a lot of societal norms. Like, I mean, there's some deep questions, but kind of like, is my worth as a person tied up in what I can provide to the world? It's not. I don't have to work hard and produce things for other people in order to have value as a human being on this planet, right? So there's something like that. But really, it's also about questioning the importance, like I was saying earlier, that not every kid needs to study all of the exact same things on the same timeline in the same way. So deschooling is really about digging in and unpacking some beliefs and sort of questioning whether or not we want to hold on to them. And some people do choose to hold on to some beliefs and to let go of others. Some people let go of more than others. It's different. But kind of like something like bedtime. I said my kids stay up late. And so that's another thing people might deschool around. Like, is it really important for my child to go to bed at a certain time and get up at a certain time? Or is it okay for them to stay up late as long as they're getting enough sleep?
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Okay. Do you find that those parents or those individuals that are ready to do unschooling for their children, if they're siblings, do they do both of them at the same time? Do they do both, or they just do one child, or how does that work?
There are definitely families that find that different settings work for their different children. So there are families that have a kid in school and have a kid out of school. I would say that the families who are most invested in unschooling probably have most of their children not in school. But I do know one family who is very invested in unschooling, and their oldest really wanted to go to school last year. And they found a school that was project-based and felt a little less schoolish than most schools. And so that was a nice compromise for the parent and the child. And they did that. So that worked for them.
Okay. Oh my goodness, this has been a wealth of information. Very a wealth of information. Do you have well, I talked about before, I have been working with North Lawndale neighborhood where I grew up, and we basically are getting into some things and whatever. We have what's called a parent university. We have a parent university, and that particular parent university is strictly for parents with children. Some blended parents are involved in whatever, but I see your information possibly coming to a setting like that, maybe in the near future. And of course, I have to check with some individuals, but I just know that I can say truly within Chicago that they have not gotten all of their children back. All of the children have not come back after the pandemic. And they're getting ready to do some drastic things as far as laws are concerned, which I don't know is going to stand up. But I just want you to, I'm just going to keep up with your information. This has been tremendous. I thank you so much. You have taught Aurelia some stuff. And we most definitely will be getting in touch. You know what? And I know that you have a following and everything, but can you sort of give us a website? I don't know if it's a place to do it in the chat or whatever, but if you can just give us your website and tell us how somebody can get in touch with you to get some more information.
Yes. Okay. So couple different places. Our space, the place where we hold our programs, that website is called abqhomeschoolconnection.com. So it's kind of a long name, but the ABQ is for Albuquerque. So abqhomeschoolconnection.com. And then I also have a website for kristenhimm.com, which is where I post. And you can actually find my coaching services on either one of those websites. But I also include, I have a couple of articles on the website that's named for me. And it's also where I post any podcasts that I do. So I'll link this one on there. Yeah. And then we also have a Facebook page. ABQ Homeschool Connection has its own Facebook page and Instagram. And I also have another Facebook page called Unschooling America, which I started for myself, and I am very inconsistent with posting on it right now. So, I have a handful of followers on that one, and I would love to have the time and space to post there a little bit more regularly. But full transparency, somebody else runs my social media for ABQ Homeschool Connection. So, and I'm so grateful to have her, because posting on social media is not necessarily my strong point.
Mm-hmm. Have you appeared at any conferences?
Not yet. I would love to. And you know what? There are actually conferences for unschooling. So I know a family that went to a conference just last weekend. There's another one coming up in Phoenix very soon. There's a couple on the East Coast this summer. So there's actually unschool conferences where hundreds of families get together and do fun things together. So, but yes, speaking and talking to people about unschooling is definitely one of my passions and something I'm building on.
Okay. This has been tremendous. I would just like to give you applause for coming. Kristen, it's so good seeing you again. And anytime you want to reach out, AureliaDavis.com, the Teacher Society, we have a connection. And it's going to be a lifelong connection, because we're passionate about the same thing. And it's the passion is about children learning by any means necessary. That's what it comes down to. So I have really enjoyed you. I had a few people on, even my daughter was on. She has a 15-year-old. So I welcome her. And then I have a couple of my former colleagues, teachers, for former colleagues that are now retired in Chicago and so on and so forth. So I just welcome to everybody that came on. And Kristen, hope to see you and talk to you again real soon, and have a nice evening. And just thank you so much for coming on the Teacher Society.
Thank you so much for having me. I just really love bringing this information to people who may not have heard it before. And I will add to you and your teacher friends, it's not official, but I swear that teachers and former teachers are overrepresented amongst unschooling parents. There are so many of us that see what's not going well and turn this way. So
yes, because it's in here. We can't stop. Have a nice evening. It's nice talking. Take care now. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.